It's morning at NTVNews on the streets of Kampala to give you the situation on the roads on this very cold morning after heavy showers that we experienced in the wee hours of the day. This is Mukwano roundabout in the industrial area of Kampala. There, it's just at the rail crossing section for you who is well versed with the industrial area. This side, as you turn off Mukwano Road to 80th Street, and here you see that the showers of course interrupted for you, the people coming from this side, because the roads are slippery. You need to make sure the tires in good condition. But for you coming from Zambia, there is no big interruption for you until you reach the Mukwano Industries, where you'll be waiting for some time, because there are vehicles coming from Chibuli direction using the depot next to CIAG and in 80th Street. They are making you have some hold up. And for you connecting towards the Ginger Road from Mukwano Road, from 80th Street, from 7th Street, as well as 6th Streets joining Ginger Road, you can see their vehicles moving faster, because the traffic officers there are the ones controlling traffic flow. It's not the traffic lights. They clear you much faster than the one coming from the Yusuf Road. As well as you coming from Ginger Road, they also allow you to cross towards the Kampala Road side for something, waiting time for just less than 5 minutes between the Electoral Commission and the traffic lights. There you really speed up so fast. And turning towards the other side of Chisugu, Namuongo, finally, as we wind up this conversation, there you will be seeing that vehicles there are also stuck just after the corner coming from Chibuli side, and many people are on the foot using this side of the rail grounds. There are some people also plying their trade along the rail line. Previously they were evicted by KCC and police, but now they are back. The market is now back in full business, but the people are using it for the foot traffic. This is the situation here from this side of the industrial area. Now taking you back to studios for Chris Higenyi, who is going to give you a conversation that post-presidential address on Ebola. Take it over from me, Chris Higenyi.
Many thanks, Stephen Mbide, for that update on traffic and looking at the situation on the ground. That is industrial area and people trying to make their way to the city on foot. That one clearly speaks of the fact that many are grappling with the inability to be able to secure or afford the means of transport, and that taking to their feet is pretty much very convenient for their pockets. It speaks very much of the economic hard times that Ugandans are going through. I do hope that can get better as soon as possible, so that we are able to be economically productive to the best of our abilities. Let's now transition from that traffic update to our Kickstarter discussion this morning. The President's speech last evening, where he came on and told the nation in the latest, or rather on the latest issues surrounding the Ebola fight and efforts to halt the spread of that disease. It seems to be, from some circles and elements, that it's a scattergun execution, and that some of the shortcomings that are being seen could well be attributed to what is no doubt not sure-footed measures when it comes to the Ebola response plan. Well, anyone can have their say from their vantage point. This morning, I'm being joined by senior political commentator, Captain Francis Babu, and of course, the executive director at the Electoral Laws Institute charity, Ahimbisibwe, for perspective and insight on that and issues within the country that are ongoing right now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Higenyi. Very good morning.
And ladies first.
Yes.
Yeah.
If there's a bullet just before this,
the lady will dive.
Yeah, interesting.
If there's no bullet,
if there's no bullets, interesting. At that point, you're going to have to take the gentleman first, so that you can protect the fairer agenda.
Thank you for having us,
Okay.
and our viewers. I hope they'll enjoy the program.
Yeah, no doubt about that. It's always a
seem to have
pleasure.
started on a note. Maybe we'll hear what you have to say.
No doubt about that. Charity Ahimbisibwe, allow me pick your mind on the President's speech last evening, and how the fight against Ebola is going from your point of view.
So the fight against Ebola can only be looked at in the view of the health workers and what they have told us, but also from the donor perspective and from previous efforts that we've had around this disease. And I want to start from the onset and say that there's been a report that was produced by the World Health Organization that says Uganda has mismanaged Ebola and that by April next year, we could have a surge of death to 500 people of the Ebola virus. And they said they were seeing a repeat of Wuhan in Uganda. The mistakes that were done with Wuhan at the beginning of COVID-19 were being repeated in Uganda with Ebola. And I don't want to blame government alone, because when it is a pandemic, when it is a health issue, it concerns all of us. Now, you will also realize that from the president's speech, he was concerned because it has economic implications.
Yeah, very much.
The tourism, he talked about it and he spent a bit of time saying, look, we had international conferences coming, they've been cancelled. And he said tourism has also been affected. And I think for me, that's where the gist is. And that's the reason why he came to TV. Beyond the numbers growing to 55 people who are dead out of the 141 people that are infected right now. I think he was also looking at the question of the economy. We already are having a debt of 80 trillion Uganda shillings, and we keep trying to borrow money. And we are really suffering. You've said economic hard times have pushed people to walk to work. They have also pushed people to stop eating certain foods because now the prices are out of the window. So we know that we're in a difficult economic situation. And then Uganda is also being blacklisted internationally. That people who are coming from Uganda, you have to be first quarantined because of Ebola. And that's why he was saying, those who know you've been a contact, please don't run away, don't try taking a flight, don't try going, because we are now being blacklisted internationally. That is also not good for us as a country. So then, how do we move and what do we do, is what he said we do. I think that the infection in Jinja also brought him on the TV sets. And the reason why I think the infection in Jinja brought him on the TV sets is because he spent time talking about the people of the wood, the ones who transport wood and the borders and the pregnant women. It was the pregnant women. But for the pregnant women, I do understand, because we don't have good health facilities everywhere. You can imagine if you're pregnant and you've always known you give birth in Mbara, you give birth in Mubende, you give birth in Kampala, and now here you are, there is a lockdown. And you're not sure if you go to that health center, you and the child will survive. These are the things that go through the minds of mothers. So I think that is where the mothers came from to try and escape. Very delicate situation there for society, and the president said, don't try doing it because you expose more people. And for him, for Jinja, because now there are 2 new cases in Jinja as of this morning. Yesterday, he was saying Mubende had dropped to 1 case after 18 days. After 18 days of the lockdown. But he said Kasanda had not. And he said the people of Kasanda are big-headed. And he said the political leadership in Kasanda was not being cooperative. At that point, I wasn't sure he was not playing politics, because I also know that Kasanda brought a lot of opposition members of parliament, but I also know that those opposition members of parliament have been on ground trying to mobilize the people to respond to the disease the way the president was saying they should respond. All right,
thank you for that preamble, Charity Ahimbisibwe. Captain Babu, what do you make of the president's speech and the tone and what is driving what could be described as reluctance on the part of the population?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, the executive powers are vested in the President of Uganda, and therefore the management of this country is under his armpit. As far as I'm concerned, the President is doing his duty. He is actually, apart from delegating powers to ministers, he's actually the ministers of everything. And therefore, he is concerned. We have a problem in this country, and the problem has been described by different forces. We know that when people talk today, I am sorry to say that information I'm getting from different international organizations is also political.
Interesting.
A lot of people think that international organizations are very, they are hygiene in terms of politics, but some of the things they are talking are actually political. How do you accuse a ministry that they are corrupt when you haven't given them any money to be corrupt of? You accuse a minister that you've given them 85 billion or 85 billion something, and then suddenly you have not given it to them. Then how do you accuse them for misusing that money? And then there's this new thing that has come up in this country, and I'll tell you where it is. And I read something somewhere, and I was very, very excited. There's media. There's a media that supports the people in the power. There's media that supports the people in the opposition. There's media that supports the international community. And then there is media that is there for fun. The media that supports the government, of course, does put in what the government policies are. Then there are those who are not in government who think they should be in government. Therefore, they tell government what they should do. There are those who believe government should do things this way. We have experts in this country who tell you how government is run. So, we need to be very careful. Mismanagement by WHO. Give us the mismanagement we're talking about. Tracing people with Ebola, knowing where Ebola came from. This is not the first time we've had Ebola in this country.
Allow me to interject at that point.
Yes.
The dilemma or the cause of tension is on the fact that funds that were disbursed to the government in the COVID-19 pandemic fight were grossly misused, and accountability didn't come forth. So when Ebola struck, the donors were very reluctant. They said, you have misused the funds. You're unable to.
Yeah, but we also know that we also know that the donors want to have a regime change.
And then they suggested.
Listen.
No.
I want to be very fair with you. You cannot continue calling history to carry out your program. We know that donors are interested in the regime change of this country. And if donors have to be fair, you are using NGOs, you are using same government organization agencies, you are giving them money, which means that you want to rule us from outside this country. If there is something wrong, point it out. As I say, we will not give you money.
You make a very serious accusation. Do you have evidence to that?
I do.
Do you have evidence to that?
Oh, yes.
Share.
Oh, yes.
Share with us.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
European Union? Your national television.
Oh, yeah. I am on national television, and I'm not ashamed of it.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed of it at all. We keep on hammering on small fellows in this country, but the real people behind most of this problem are actually our partners. Our partners have got a habit. Something went wrong when we had COVID. There has been a lot of investigation, including themselves. There's also the auditor reports that has come out. There are procedures following these things around, and therefore you cannot use that basis to refuse this very deadly disease called Ebola, which could actually spill over from this country to other countries and even their own country. This is not the first time we have had Ebola here. I want us to get that point very clear.
We are a success story in handling Ebola. Yes. This time around, we've flattered to deceive.
No, you can't. Give us a point where. Ebola happened in two districts initially. They went through there. They announced that we are having Ebola problems. We are having shortages of money. We are having all these problems, but we are already there, and we are tracing where this thing is coming from. So there are processes. And the Ministry of Health and Finance did put out the requirement that is required to try and combat this problem. Now, when you sit there, and I'm sorry, You cannot rule this country simply because you are in an embassy somewhere and become the head of state of this country. You can't.
That's interesting.
Yes, you can't. We have a head of state.
Yeah.
We have a government. Now, the ambassador here is actually coming here because they're our partners. Our partners must respect other partners. You
mean the U.S. ambassador?
No, all of them. All of them, including the European.
Be specific.
No, even
we
European
have an ambassador
Union.
from Latvia.
Listen. I am saying our partners.
Our partners.
Yes, it
And
doesn't matter which partner.
Front of that.
European Union is also our partners.
Yeah.
Britain is our partner. Germany is our partner. All these, they are very nice people. We have no problem. But you see, they cannot rule our country from their capitals.
Charity, it's interesting that the conversation has tilted to a very contentious angle on that point. You are within the civil society space, and of course I know there is a lot of synergy and partnerships with the donors, and Captain Francis Babu is very specific about that. Somebody is trying to condition regime change, so much so that, for example, the holding back of funds in the fight against Ebola is perhaps one of the tools to reach to that particular end. Is that true?
Of course, that's not 100% true.
Let's talk on the percentages of the truth in it.
You know, of course, if you're going to think about the percentages of the truth in it, then you're going to be going to global politics. If you go to global politics, every country has interests. And even when they're giving funds, they go with their interests first. Ahead of the funds.
Ahead of the funds.
So if you're going to think about percentages, then you would have to explain the interest of each country in why they are doing what they do. But I didn't want to take that journey. I wanted to look at it from a more balanced view.
Please do.
And more balanced view, why? Because I know that the government of Uganda benefits from donor funding. So yes, you might want to accuse civil society organizations and NGOs of receiving funding from government, from donors. But the donors give more money to government than they can give to NGOs. If you look at the health sector, for example, you say the funds almost 90% of the budget of health in Uganda. You go to PEPFAR fund, funding is from US. Go to USAID funds for all health issues is from the US. So the US government is funding a lot of the health sector. So when they accuse, if it is time to point fingers for government to say they are giving NGOs money to pull government down, then we should also say they are giving government money to pull itself down. Because now that is it. They are giving us money, they are giving them money. So who is putting who down? So that debate, I think, is better not brought into the Ebola talk.
Okay.
What is better brought into the Ebola talk? Because now that is playing politics. And playing politics for Ebola is not going to be useful for any Ugandan. What I think is more useful for this government and for anybody who believes in this government, bring the accountability for COVID-19. If you were given funds, yes you were. You failed to account for the money. Bring the accountability is all that you're being asked to do. If you give me 100 million, you expect me to account for that money. The Auditor General has produced a report where he said COVID money was mismanaged. Auditor General is a government body. We are relying on data, statistics coming from the government. So if the Auditor General has raised these issues, respond to what the Auditor General has raised. Don't just wish it away. Don't rub it under the carpet. And I think that is where it is most important for a government. And that's where the donors are coming from and saying, look, instead of giving the funds directly to government, let us use agencies, let's give them PPEs. And they were giving PPEs. And of course you saw a backlash. And the backlash happened with the ministers coming out to say, no, even the donors have to be audited, and I have no problem. Why not audit the donors also?
Do you have a problem, Captain, with budgetary support being channeled to stakeholders other than...
Yes, whenever you want to do anything in this country, you must go through government. even if you want to use an agency, the government has to know that you're using the agency and for this.
But that's
and you sit, no.
been clear.
They didn't tell them. They just went straight to the agencies. And you know, you people, you know, let's not play this game. I am saying you are now, instead of talking about Ebola and COVID, you are talking about corruption.
About corruption.
If you want us to talk about corruption, please let us do so.
How can we avoid those waters?
No, you have to separate the two for debate.
Okay.
First of all, these two diseases are not things that you can play around with by using the word corruption. How much is corruption of all the funds that were given to us to fight both COVID and now what has been given to us to fight Ebola? Now, if you say there is corruption, I have no problem with that at all. We found out during that that thing from Geneva, which was given to the Ministry of Gavi and whatnot, we found out that the international body also had problems. Are you with me? So let us. Please. The international people do not have. They are not angels, and they have only pure hygiene that they are clean. They also have their problems. Yeah. They are human beings, and the corruption is across the country. Now, my sister, don't be disappointed. I have no problem with NGOs. But let's be frank. The one who pays the piper calls the tune. So let us be very, very careful. I'm not saying that there is no corruption. Please, let's get this point clear.
Neither have I suggested.
Let us talk about corruption and say this and this and this was not right. But don't use corruption, as a basis of interfering with the Ebola program. Ebola is a dangerous disease. Ebola, in West Africa, it really tortured people there.
It is a dangerous disease,
let me tell you,
we do agree.
And this business of saying there's this one, there's that one, that's why the president. This president is the man in this country, according to our constitution, in whose executive powers are vested. Good. And therefore, he's got to be very concerned.
Allow me ask this fundamental question: If Ebola, not that we are speculating about how bad it can be, it is known to be a very virulent and hemorrhagic disease. It can completely dissipate a population.
And transmission.
Now, with that knowledge, why would the government and its actors vacillate on information rollout, especially when it comes to sensitization and what can be done for the health workers who are at the front of ensuring that the halt is conducted to this disease? That is the sum of the apathy that donors are grappling with right now. They are saying there is so much that you can do as a government, but you continue to wait and, for example, attach all that to the fact that we haven't released money through you.
Who said they're waiting? Who said the Ministry of Health is waiting? For goodness sake. They're the ones who told you we're having Ebola. They're the ones who've been running around, even with the little they have.
3 months after the first.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Why shouldn't it matter?
It depends on our system. We are not United States. We are not Britain. Some of you went to Britain to study. You think we're in Oxford. No, we are in Uganda. We have our handicaps. Now listen, we have our handicaps. I am not saying that there are no mistakes. Please let us, people here, they talk about utopia. You know, we have people, utopians, who think things should work this way.
Does the government think the way you think?
Oh yes. Oh yes. By the way,
are you sure?
In government, and I want to warn you, removing the few corrupt characters, a lot of people in government are really screwed up with what they do. Especially the civil servants in this country. Wow. They are very highly trained. No, please. Please. I have a lot of respect.
That's right.
Some of them who are very, very good. They might have a few problems here and there, but they are very highly trained and they do a very good job. And let me assure you, if you talk to some of those doctors in the Ministry of Health and some of the professors in Makerere University and the Research Institute in Entebbe, you'll be very surprised. They are really up to now. One of the things that I think we should think about. A lot of people say, no, let those experts come and talk to us, because people feel they talk a little bit more. We should get the politicians out of this. But it's difficult to separate politicians from these people because they work together. So, as far as I'm concerned, yes, there is corruption. Yes, maybe some things went wrong during COVID. Yes, there might be a few things in government that don't go right. How much of that and how much of it can really be implemented? Because we've got to be very careful here. There's no perfect system.
There isn't a perfect system, no doubt. But when, for example, a system identifies or rather knows that there isn't a perfect one to adopt and continues to play games and take advantage of that is what causes apathy within the population. Ugandans right now are looking at government, just hold on, Captain. Yes. Ugandans are looking at government and they're saying, we know what happened 2 years ago. We know what hasn't been.
Who's we?
The people.
Which one?
The Ugandans.
They know what?
They know how funds were misappropriated.
Really?
How response...
Do they?
They do.
Do they?
How response to the COVID pandemic was stopgap at some point.
Let's go.
And they are seeing it play out.
Let's go inch by inch. Let's go inch by inch. When the auditor,
very quickly,
when the Auditor General goes into the system of accounts throughout the government, he finds mistakes here and there in the accounts. It's the accounting.
Yeah.
Then he puts out a report asking that ministry to answer.
Which has not happened.
Please, please.
Which has not happened.
Please. The system, that's the way to... He does not give the report only to the ministry. He actually hands the report to Parliament.
Exactly.
It is then Parliament that calls.
Allow us to have Charity Ahimbisibwe interject on that particular subject.
No problem. No problem at all.
Please do. There is a lot that
so we have, I think one of the things that Captain Francis Babu is running away from is the question of accountability. And I will tell you that accountability is critical in every facet of life. Even ordinary household life, accountability is important. A husband will ask a wife, where have you been? A wife will ask a husband, I've waited until midnight. Accountability is a critical aspect of life. You cannot keep saying, I will not be accountable, and the system doesn't break down. Even at home level, if you don't account for your activities, which your wife is asking for or your husband is asking for, that marriage will break down. And for the government, it is worse. So for accountability, let us not relegate on our duty to account for every fund we have been given, whether it is government funding, whether it's taxes, a taxpayer's money. People are crying right now that we're being overtaxed. Even SMEs are saying, no, we cannot afford to survive because they want accountability for their money. If you see where your money is going, and the accountability channels are clear, and you can account for the last shillings. People said here in COVID, the president called them and said, people, give every little you have, let us go and support our friends. And people collected money. People collected cars, gave their cars, gave things. People were giving 10,000, people were giving 20 to rescue fellow Ugandans. And by the way, except you didn't lose someone during COVID and you didn't see the bills that were being asked for in hospital. If you had a patient in hospital, you were paying 2 million Uganda shillings, 2 million per day to keep your patient in ICU. Honorable Francis Babu, except you want us to forget the pain from where we came from with COVID. You know me, I lost someone very close to me. 2 million. Where do you get that money from when you're an ordinary Ugandan? 2 million to keep him even for 1 week. You had to fundraise. Accountability is critical.
Captain Francis Babu, I am a journalist.
Yes.
I watch television a lot.
Oh, very nice.
Away from being on it.
Which program?
And I haven't seen...
Barometer?
I haven't seen what I can describe as a clear-headed approach when it comes to public announcements from the Ministry of Health, sensitization through the media. I haven't. If you have, and you can you can attach to it and say this is being done, this is being done. Don't you think there is a bit of somebody has dropped the ball somewhere in government when it comes to sensitization on Ebola? Because we are expecting the public, for example, when you make an appeal And appealing is very good, no doubt about that. But when you make an impassioned appeal, you depend entirely on the other person's ability to decipher what you're saying. Now, Ugandans, on the other end, might not necessarily decipher what you're saying. They have so many issues they're grappling with that might affect even the way they understand your message as a government. And that means sensitization, public announcements, and campaigns across communities. We've seen trucks before, Ministry of Health, doing rounds. We don't see them. What do you say about that?
No, well, it's a very good point you've made, and I'd like to request that you help me and call the director of health
Services, yep,
and ask him about their program, which he will give you because they've got it. Secondly, these sentiments, we all have lost people. For you to come on radio and start using people who died, and because of this, no, people died. Our hospitals are very expensive. We've had some of our people have problems even paying the bills in hospital. That one we all have. That's part of them. We can talk about that as a debate. What is the problem with our health services? But let us now go back to your point you just made. You're saying the Minister of Health, in your opinion, as a media man, that you have not seen them do sensitization.
Aggressive sensitization.
Yeah. Now, we need to get somebody from that ministry, in that department, to come here.
That's right.
And get also some of the people they work with, what sort of sensitization which is out there. But to sit down and assume it is not there is not fair.
It's not an assumption.
No, call them.
Okay.
Call them. Let us not be here and decide and become judge and jury. Let us also to talk about something else. And I want to make this very point. Let us not play this game to the gallery. Because there's a problem here, because somebody has died here, therefore the whole ministry is it's wrong. We have a lot of problems in Mulago. We have a lot of problems in our hospitals, our clinics, and everything. I don't have any doubt about that. We even have corruption in some of those organizations. I want us to talk about the topic you brought, which is the topic of the I don't know if this is a pandemic, but
it's threatening.
Yeah, it's not a pandemic. It's not international.
It's not an epidemic.
It's not international. It's an epidemic here. Now, it's a very dangerous disease. And we need to put all our hands on deck to find solutions to it. Blaming only the government and not all other parties, you are being very unfair. Now, to go back to the auditor's report, all right? If you took the total sum of money that was in COVID, which we have put in COVID, how much of it are we talking about in terms of corruption, in terms of percentage? How much of it was put in use? And what really happened? Did the government play its part within its limits? Yes,
are you
it did.
willing
Yes.
to dismiss the fact that if the money that went to corruption is lesser than that was put into efforts to address the issues, are you trying to say it's something we can bat an eye for?
You do not write off a government because of errors, because of mistakes, because of corruption. You find out how much of that in terms of percentage and try and find out how quickly you can even recap that percentage, because the government is liable. By the way, I'm not saying the government is not liable.
No, you're not.
But because the government is liable does not mean when we have a problem with Ebola, we should now punish government. We should punish the people of Uganda.
You're succeeding inevitably in telling us that government must not be put on the pedestal.
No.
You're succeeding inevitably.
No, I'm not.
This
is wrong. You see, this is the problem with you. Government is very big. It's not one department. It's a big organization. And we've got people who are looking after it. All right? I am saying, whatever the corruption might be, I don't think should be the basis of playing with Ebola now. We should fight with Ebola and continue fighting the corruption.
Okay.
All right.
That's fair enough.
There is something the president expressed dismay over, the fact that some of the local practices with our people continue to challenge health workers when, for example, a corpse is exhumed and then rituals or rites have to be performed. It is something that takes you a little bit aback, considering that we should be way past that point in life where exhuming a corpse in order to conduct rituals in such a time. I don't know how best can we address this particular issue as a society.
And I think that one is complicated. I agree with him. By the way, he banned witch doctors from carrying out any activity during this time.
They are not.
He said if you're a traditional healer, you're a witch doctor, you know, he banned churches during COVID. So the traditional healers should not think that it is...
they are being targeted unfairly.
I think that they should run away from that, and even the ones that practice it should run away from that. And I think the reason he had to do that, he's also looking at the numbers. First and foremost, he said he's shocked that we could reach that number, 55, and he even got shocked about the explosion. He talked about it as explosion in Kasanda. I think the shock for him is because he said, and if you remember, he took time saying, why do you have to shake hands? He said, stop shaking those hands. Why do you want to show that I'm happy to see you by shaking your hand? Stop it. And I think he has a big point. I have been seeing people, we go to places, in universities especially, and the students don't want to hear. They are like, that's the president with his Ebola talk. And they don't want to wash hands. They're telling them there is water at the entrance. Please come on, wash your hands. They've refused. And this is university. University where you're expecting that, okay, people have a certain sense of thinking and understanding, but it has failed. And indeed, when you talk about the investment in public awareness, I think it is important. It has been happening. They have been putting out Bizindalo. They've had those small vans. Yes, in communities. In Kampala, I have heard in Kampala. I don't know about Kasanda. I don't know about Mubende. But for Kampala, I have heard. The ministry runs around with those megaphones and announces there is Ebola around, but don't be afraid. What you need to do is wash your hands, keep away from people, contact. They've been spreading this information. What they need to do now is to up the game. Radio, TV, because radio and TV reaches far. They may not have a budget for radio and TV. Government has airtime on radios across the country, the Ministry of ICT. So they should utilize that space and drum up
Charity, let's allow Captain Francis Babu to wrap this up for us. Do you think government needs to go on a confidence-building measure or drive?
Any government, that should be perpetual. It's not something you should sit down. But I'd like to thank Madame. She said the Minister of Health is going around with the megaphones, talking to people and all that. That answers.
No, I told you.
That answers some. But I think there are two sides to this story of people. There is a lot of propaganda out there because I talk to the ordinary people. The people say, they are telling lies. There's no Ebola. They are just looking for money to build malls.
Because people have seen it before.
That's the talk. No, they have seen what? Which mall? Our good partners. Our good partners have got intelligence. Wait a minute. They've got a lot of intelligence. Our good partners, very good intelligence. They should tell government that mall belongs to so and so, and that money came from here. Let us get these points very clear. This business of saying so-and-so has got this, so-and-so has got this, to me that is a rumor.
There was a committee that sat one time, and the Minister for Finance revealed that some of the funds that were handed during the COVID had gone into building a mall along Gaza Road. So when you speak of evidence, sometimes we do not want to see the evidence.
No, I wish I could see it.
Captain Francis Babu,
let me finish this because it's very, very important. Please, let us not confuse two things. Let us not confuse that government is clean, is hygiene, and there's nothing. Government has got some people within it who are corrupt. Yeah. And number two, there are good people in this government also.
Yes.
And those good people are doing a good job. And another thing, this disease called Ebola is not something we should play with. We should continue fighting the bad people in government, but we should put our concentration on finding solutions to the Ebola problem.
Captain Francis Babu, senior political commentator, many thanks for the insight and perspective, as well as Charity Ahimbisibwe, executive director at the Electoral Laws Institute. That has been it for the Kickstarter discussion. Morning at NTV continues. Priscilla Regina Ndaloga will be at hand to take note on fostering the potential of African youth in the development processes. Stay with us. You're watching Morning at NTV.